The field trip to Blackwood Forest was supposed to be a day of exploration and learning for the fifth graders of Elkhorn Elementary. 23 excited students, 2 teachers, and 3 parent volunteers boarded the yellow school bus that crisp autumn morning in 1997. Among them was 10-year-old Sarah Mitchell, a bright-eyed girl known for her curiosity about nature and wildlife. None of them could have predicted that by day's end, Sarah would vanish without a trace, becoming one of the most baffling disappearances in the state's history. The group arrived at the forest preserve around 9:30 a.m., and after a brief orientation by the park ranger, they split into smaller groups to explore different hiking trails. Sarah was assigned to Mrs. Patterson's group along with 7 other students. The weather was perfect: clear skies, mild temperature, and a gentle breeze rustling through the colorful fall foliage. About 2 hours into the excursion, during a scheduled stop at an observation deck overlooking the valley, Mrs. Patterson conducted a routine head count. That's when panic first set in. Sarah was missing. At first, they assumed she had wandered a short distance away, perhaps distracted by a bird or plant that caught her attention. Mrs. Patterson instructed the other students to stay with the parent volunteer while she searched the immediate area, calling Sarah's name. When initial searches yielded nothing, Mrs. Patterson radioed the other groups and the park ranger station. Within 30 minutes, all other activities were suspended, and everyone joined in the search for Sarah. By early afternoon, local police and forest rangers had arrived, bringing search dogs and additional personnel. What makes this case particularly baffling are the circumstances surrounding Sarah's disappearance. The area where she vanished was an open observation deck with clear sight lines in all directions. There was nowhere she could have gone without being seen by someone in the group. Even more puzzling was the fact that search dogs couldn't pick up her scent beyond the deck itself. It was as if she had completely vanished into thin air. As hours turned into days, the search expanded. Hundreds of volunteers combed through thousands of acres of forest. Helicopters with thermal imaging cameras scanned the terrain. Divers checked nearby ponds and streams. Missing person posters with Sarah's smiling face appeared across the county and neighboring states. The FBI was called in to assist with what was now classified as a possible abduction case. But despite the massive search effort, not a single clue was found. No clothing, no personal items, no signs of struggle, absolutely nothing. It was as if Sarah Mitchell had simply ceased to exist at that observation deck. In the months that followed, investigators pursued various theories. Could she have fallen from the deck and somehow been overlooked in the search? Impossible, experts said. The area below had been meticulously examined. Was she abducted? If so, how could someone take a child from a group without anyone noticing and leave no evidence behind? Could she have wandered off on her own? The search dogs should have been able to track her scent if that were the case. Some of the more unusual theories began to emerge as conventional explanations failed. A few people pointed to the area's history of unexplained phenomena. The forest preserve sits on land that local indigenous tribes had allegedly considered spiritually significant, a place where the boundary between worlds was thin. Others suggested sinkholes or undiscovered cave systems, though geological surveys found no evidence supporting these ideas. What adds another layer of strangeness to Sarah's case are the testimonies of 3 other students who were on the observation deck that day. In separate interviews, all 3 mentioned experiencing a strange moment of disorientation just before they realized Sarah was missing. A sudden silence where the forest sounds stopped, followed by what one described as a wobbly feeling in the air. 2 of them reported seeing a brief flash of blue light from the corner of their eyes. Initially, investigators dismissed these accounts as the imagination of frightened children, but the consistency between their stories, despite being interviewed separately, has continued to puzzle those familiar with the case. Sarah's parents never gave up hope. For years, they maintained her room exactly as she left it that morning, with her favorite stuffed penguin sitting on her neatly made bed. They established a foundation in her name, dedicated to improving safety protocols for school field trips and funding research into missing persons cases. Every year on the anniversary of her disappearance, they returned to that observation deck in Blackwood Forest, leaving a bouquet of yellow daisies, Sarah's favorite flower. The case saw a bizarre development in 2008, 11 years after Sarah vanished. A wildlife photographer capturing images of birds in a remote section of Blackwood Forest, miles from the observation deck, discovered a child's hair clip partially buried in the soil. The clip, a distinctive butterfly design with small, sapphire-colored stones, was positively identified by Sarah's parents as belonging to their daughter. It had been a gift from her grandmother just weeks before the field trip. How did the clip end up miles from where Sarah was last seen, in an area that had been thoroughly searched years before? And why did it take 11 years to surface? Erosion, a natural ground movement, was suggested, but experts found this explanation unlikely given the distance and terrain. The discovery briefly reignited the investigation, but like everything else in this case, it only deepened the mystery rather than resolving it. Ground-penetrating radar was used to check for disturbed soil or buried evidence in the area where the clip was found, but nothing further was discovered. 26 years have passed since that autumn day when Sarah Mitchell stepped onto an observation deck and into the realm of unsolved mysteries. Her case file remains open, classified as an active missing person investigation. Her age-progressed photos continue to be updated and circulated periodically, though there have never been any confirmed sightings. The field trip to Blackwood Forest transformed the small community of Elkhorn. School excursion protocols were completely overhauled nationwide. Parents who once felt safe letting their children explore outdoor spaces became more cautious. And for those who were there that day, the question remains: what happened to Sarah Mitchell in those few moments when everyone's attention was elsewhere? Some mysteries seem determined to remain unsolved, leaving us to wonder about the boundaries of our understanding. Was it a tragic case of human predation, carried out with impossible stealth and precision? Or something else entirely, something beyond conventional explanation? The observation deck still stands in Blackwood Forest, a silent witness to whatever transpired there on that autumn day when a little girl in a red jacket walked into oblivion, leaving behind nothing but questions that still haunt us today. On April 15, 2011, 42 students from Millfield High School's senior class embarked on what should have been a routine educational trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Natural History. Led by 3 teachers and 2 parent chaperones, the group was scheduled to spend the day exploring the museum's new exhibition on ancient civilizations. Instead, they would become the subjects of one of the most bizarre and unexplained group phenomena ever documented. The morning proceeded normally. The class arrived at the museum at 9:15 a.m. and split into 3 groups to tour different sections before reuniting for lunch in the museum cafeteria. It was during their afternoon visit to the Ancient Egypt wing that things took a disturbing turn. As the students entered the dimly lit hall housing the Temple of Dender exhibit, several of them began to report feeling strangely lightheaded. Ms. Brennan, the history teacher leading this particular group, initially attributed it to the temperature change or possibly the slightly lower oxygen levels in the carefully climate-controlled room. But within minutes, the situation escalated dramatically. 17 students, all standing in different parts of the exhibit hall, simultaneously collapsed to the floor. They didn't faint gradually. Witnesses described it as if someone had suddenly cut their strings. The remaining students and chaperones rushed to help their fallen classmates, while museum security called for emergency medical services. When first responders arrived, they found an even more perplexing situation. All 17 affected students were conscious, but in an inexplicable state. Their vital signs were normal, their pupils reactive, and they showed no signs of seizure activity or other medical distress. Yet every single one of them was experiencing the exact same delusion. They all insisted they were someone else. Each affected student claimed to be a specific person from ancient Egypt, speaking in fragmented English, with what language experts would later identify as phonetic patterns consistent with ancient Egyptian dialects. They gave names, occupations, and details about their lives with absolute conviction. One student, football captain Jason Miller, insisted he was Amenhotep, royal scribe to Pharaoh Thutmose III. Emma Carter, the class valedictorian, calmly stated she was Nefertari, weaver from the lower kingdom. Even more disturbing was that none of the affected students recognized their friends, teachers, or even their own parents when they arrived at the hospital. They reacted with genuine confusion and sometimes fear when shown photos of themselves or told their real names. Medical staff at Manhattan General Hospital were completely baffled. Toxicology screens came back negative for any known substances that could cause such specific shared delusions. Brain scans showed unusual but identical patterns of activity in all 17 students, concentrated in the areas associated with memory and identity. The phenomenon persisted for exactly 76 hours. During this time, psychologists, neurologists, and even parapsychologists documented the students' bizarre claims. Each affected student maintained a completely consistent alternative identity throughout the episode. They could describe details of ancient Egyptian daily life that historians confirmed were archaeologically accurate, including some details that weren't displayed anywhere in the museum exhibit and would be known only to specialized scholars. Most remarkably, when researchers brought in Egyptologists who spoke Coptic, the closest modern language to ancient Egyptian, several of the students appeared to partially understand and respond appropriately, despite having no prior knowledge of the language. One Egyptologist from Columbia University recorded over 4 hours of conversation with the affected students, and later stated that they used terms and grammatical structures that would be nearly impossible for a modern person to fake without extensive linguistic training. Then, as suddenly as it began, the phenomenon ended. At exactly 7:23 p.m. on April 18th, all 17 students simultaneously gasped and looked around in confusion, immediately recognizing their surroundings and reverting to their normal identities. None had any memory of the preceding 3 days. From their perspective, they had just been standing in the museum exhibit and then suddenly found themselves in hospital beds. The aftermath brought more questions than answers. Investigators from multiple agencies descended on the museum, testing everything from air quality to electromagnetic fields in the ancient Egypt wing. The exhibit was temporarily closed but reopened after no environmental hazards could be identified. Some speculated about mass hysteria or suggestion, but experts pointed out that the affected students had been standing far apart from each other when they collapsed simultaneously, making this explanation problematic. Museum records revealed an unsettling coincidence. The centerpiece of the exhibition was a collection of artifacts from the reign of Thutmose III, the very pharaoh mentioned by one of the affected students. More specifically, many of the artifacts came from a recently excavated administrative complex where scribes and artisans had lived and worked. The excavation had been somewhat controversial, with local workers reporting strange occurrences at the dig site and several walking off the job citing superstitious fears. What makes this case particularly compelling is the extensive documentation. Because it happened in 2011, there was surveillance video capturing the moment of collapse, hundreds of hours of recordings of the students during their altered state, and comprehensive medical tests ruling out conventional explanations. Yet, despite all this evidence, no conclusive explanation has ever been established. The affected students have since graduated and moved on with their lives, though many report ongoing psychological effects. Several developed a sudden, inexplicable interest in ancient Egypt after the incident, despite having no memory of their experiences. Others describe recurring dreams of places they've never been, featuring landmarks from ancient Thebes and Memphis. 3 of the students have even gone on to careers in archaeology or Egyptology, driven by what they describe as a feeling of connection they can't quite explain. Annual medical and psychological follow-ups with the group have continued to show subtle but persistent changes in their brain activity, compared to baseline scans from before the incident. A research paper published in the Journal of Anomalous Experience documented that all 17 students show identical, unusual patterns in their theta wave activity during sleep, patterns not seen in any control group. Various theories have been proposed over the years. Some researchers suggest an extreme form of cryptomnesia, where the students somehow accessed deeply buried historical information through some unknown mechanism. Others point to the controversial concept of genetic memory, the idea that experiences can be passed down through generations at a cellular level. The more fringe theories involve concepts like psychic imprinting or even reincarnation, though these remain far outside mainstream scientific consideration. The museum itself has changed little since the incident. The Ancient Egypt exhibit continues to draw thousands of visitors each year, and no similar incidents have been reported. A small plaque near the Temple of Dendar acknowledges the unexplained medical event of April 2011 without providing details. Museum staff are reportedly trained in specific protocols should anything similar occur again, though the nature of these protocols remains confidential. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Millfield High incident is that it happened not in some remote location or distant past, but in one of the world's most visited museums, in the heart of New York City, in our modern era of advanced medical knowledge and constant digital surveillance. If such an inexplicable event can occur under these circumstances and still defy explanation, what other aspects of our reality might remain beyond our understanding? For the 42 students and their families, what was supposed to be a forgettable day of educational enrichment became a dividing line in their lives, before and after the museum. And for those 17 students who temporarily became someone else, the question lingers. Were these identities completely random manifestations of a shared delusion? Or did something in that museum room momentarily thin the veil between past and present, allowing something to flow through? The Millfield High Museum trip remains one of the most well-documented yet completely unexplained phenomena in recent history, a modern mystery with ancient roots. Every summer since 1972, Wilderness Ridge Camp has hosted teens from across the Midwest for 2-week sessions focused on nature appreciation and outdoor skills. The camp's sterling safety record and experienced staff made it a trusted institution for generations of families. But on July 7, 2016, an overnight hiking expedition involving 14 campers and 2 counselors would become the center of a mystery that continues to baffle experts from multiple fields. The group set out at 2 p.m. for what was planned as a moderate 7-mile hike to Eagle Point, a designated camping area within the park's boundaries where they would spend the night before returning to the main camp the following day. The weather was clear, and all participants were equipped with proper gear, including GPS devices and emergency radios. The campers, all between the ages of 15 and 17, were experienced outdoor enthusiasts who had completed the camp's preliminary safety training. According to the established protocol, the hiking group was to check in with base camp via radio every 2 hours. The 4:00 p.m. check-in occurred normally, with head counselor Marcus Delaney reporting that the group was making good time and was approximately halfway to Eagle Point. The weather remained favorable, and all campers were accounted for and in good spirits. The 6:00 p.m. check-in never came. When repeated calls to both counselors' radios went unanswered, Camp Director Elaine Winters followed emergency procedures and contacted local forest rangers. By 7:30 p.m., a search and rescue operation was underway, with rangers and volunteer searchers heading toward Eagle Point along the designated trail. Given the clear conditions and the group's equipment, authorities weren't initially overly concerned, suspecting radio malfunction as the most likely explanation. At 11:42 p.m., as search teams approached Eagle Point, all 16 missing hikers suddenly appeared on the trail, walking in single file toward the search party. They appeared physically unharmed, but were described by the rescue team as moving mechanically and unusually silent. When approached, they responded to questions with short, almost robotic answers, identifying themselves correctly,
but providing no explanation for their radio silence. The mystery deepened when it was discovered that every watch, phone, and device
carried by the group had stopped at exactly 5:47 p.m. and restarted at 11:38 p.m., mere minutes before they encountered the search party. Nearly 6 hours had apparently elapsed, yet none of the hikers could account for this time. According to them, they had been walking normally along the trail when they suddenly noticed the searchlights ahead. They had no awareness of any radio calls or of the passage of time. All 16 individuals were transported back to the main camp and then to North Lake Memorial Hospital for evaluation. Physical examinations revealed no injuries or abnormalities, though all showed signs of significant dehydration despite their water supplies being nearly full. Blood tests revealed unusual electrolyte imbalances consistent with much longer exposure to the elements than just a few hours of hiking. Most strangely, every member of the group had elevated levels of melatonin, the hormone associated with sleep regulation, at concentrations typically seen only in deep sleep states. When interviewed separately, each hiker gave virtually identical accounts of their experience, with no variation in the timeline or events described. None could remember anything between approaching a particular bend in the trail near Black Rock Ridge at approximately 5:45 p.m. and seeing the search team's lights at what they thought was just moments later. When told about the missing hours, their reactions ranged from disbelief to profound distress. In the days that followed, camp authorities, law enforcement, and eventually specialists from several universities examined every aspect of the incident. The trail was thoroughly searched, with particular attention to the area around Black Rock Ridge, where the group's memories seemed to end. Nothing unusual was found, aside from a circular area approximately 30 feet in diameter, where vegetation appeared slightly wilted, as if exposed to intense heat. Soil samples from this area showed unexplained mineral changes consistent with electrical discharge, though no storms had been recorded in the area. Data recovered from one camper's damaged phone revealed something particularly unsettling. The device had continued taking automatic backup photos to cloud storage at 10-minute intervals throughout the missing period. Instead of showing scenes from the trail, all photos from 5:50 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. showed only solid black frames. However, detailed analysis by technical experts revealed that these weren't images of darkness or a covered lens. The photos contained absolutely no data whatsoever, as if the camera had been attempting to photograph a complete void. 1 week after the incident, several of the hikers began experiencing the same disturbing dream. Without having communicated with each other, 5 of them independently reported dreaming of standing in a circular room with walls that seemed to shift between solid and transparent. In these dreams, they described seeing figures moving behind the walls and hearing what one camper described as a language made of light. By the 2-week mark, 12 of the 16 affected individuals had reported variations of this same dream. More alarmingly, all of the hikers began displaying unusual cognitive changes. Each demonstrated sudden aptitude in areas where they had previously shown no particular talent. One camper, who had been failing mathematics, solved complex calculus problems with ease. Another began creating intricate geometric drawings that mathematics professors later identified as visual representations of higher dimensional objects that should have been beyond the conceptual grasp of a high school student. 3 others developed what neurologists confirmed was synesthesia, the ability to see sounds or taste colors, a neurological condition they hadn't experienced before the incident. 2 months after the event, during routine medical follow-ups, doctors discovered that all 16 individuals now shared another inexplicable characteristic, a small, perfectly circular birthmark-like spot at the base of their skulls that didn't appear in any previous medical records or photographs. Dermatological biopsies showed unusual cellular structures that 3 separate labs were unable to identify. The case attracted attention from various government agencies, though official statements simply referenced an environmental anomaly affecting the hikers. Internal documents later obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests revealed that the area around Black Rock Ridge had been subject to classified geological surveys following the incident, though the results of these surveys remain redacted. Wilderness. Ridge Camp implemented extensive new safety protocols and rerouted all trails to avoid the Black Rock Ridge area. Despite these precautions, they experienced a significant drop in enrollment following publicity about the incident. The camp ultimately closed in 2019, citing financial difficulties. The affected hikers and counselors have attempted to move forward with their lives, though many report ongoing psychological impacts. Several have formed a support group that meets monthly to discuss their experiences and the continuing effects of whatever happened that day. They refer to themselves simply as the 16. Perhaps most chilling are the astronomical observations made by Dr. Eleanor Hartley of the Kensington Observatory. Reviewing archival data from the night of July 7, 2016, she identified what she terms a localized gravitational anomaly directly above the Wilderness Ridge area during the exact time frame of the missing hours. According to her peer-reviewed paper, the anomaly's characteristics were inconsistent with any known natural phenomenon. 5 years after the incident, one of the counselors, Lisa Chen, committed suicide. The note she left behind contained just 7 words. "They're coming back for the rest of us." Was the Wilderness Ridge incident a case of mass hallucination? An encounter with unknown natural phenomena? Or something even more inexplicable? With each passing year, as the affected hikers continue to display unexplained cognitive abilities and physiological changes, the mystery only deepens. Whatever happened during those lost hours at Wilderness Ridge remains one of the most thoroughly documented yet completely unexplained events in the annals of modern wilderness expeditions. A reminder that even in our age of GPS tracking and constant connectivity, there are still dark spaces where the unexplained can reach out and touch us, leaving its mark in ways we may never fully comprehend.